I've reported a few times on the arrests that occurred after the protests, which was sparked by the murder of 3 girls in Southport. Although this was probably the catalyst for the protests and the riots in some respect, it was certainly the result of bubbling tensions and growing frustration from the public that the powers that be and the ruling classes were simply not listening to genuine concerns they had about illegal and legal migration. Anyway, it turns out that 5 more men have now been jailed for taking part in these protests and riots, including throwing bricks and other materials at a mosque. Now, I have to say, first off, if you're throwing anything that is liable to cause harm or damage to people, property, or anything in its way, then that is an offence and should be treated as such. However, as we've spoken about before, when it comes to sentencing people for such crimes, then they should be confined to sentencing guidelines and historic precedents rather than exaggerating the sentences in order to basically make a point or, in their words, send a message. So let's have a look and see what this guy did and whether actually it was as simple as throwing a brick at a mosque. Or should I just say throwing a brick at a building? Now, the reason I put it like that is not because I'm Islamophobic, but because we don't actually have blasphemy laws in the UK. Throwing a brick at a mosque should carry the same sentencing as throwing a brick at another building, for example a shop or an office or actually even a church. Because we don't have blasphemy laws, the sanctity of the building is not protected any more than any other private property would be. Now, there are 5 men who were jailed as a result of these recent trials. However, I want to focus particularly on a gentleman called Ashley Morris, who was one of the 5 and has been jailed for 3 years, I believe. Morris of Newcastle-under-Lyme was caught on CCTV and police body-worn cameras throwing missiles, including stones and bricks, at the Darrell Fowler Mosque in Town Road, Hanley, Staffordshire. Not something you should be doing, certainly a crime, but not one, I believe, from previous precedent and by sentencing guidelines, is something that would land you in prison. Morris picked up a brick from the ground and threw it towards the mosque after heading into town with a curiosity to see what was going on. After he finished work and tried to go to a shop that was closed because of the disorder. His barrister, Stuart Muldoon, told the court on Tuesday. The father of 3 young sons was also the victim of a hammer attack at the protest, which left him with 6 stitches in his head and a broken nose. Sorry to interrupt the video. Only 5% of the people who watch these videos regularly are actually subscribed. If you don't mind just hitting that subscribe button, it's completely free. There's no obligation. You can unsubscribe at any time and there would be no hard feelings from me. There's also a link in the description below if you fancy buying me a pint. It says buy me a coffee, but a pint's much better, isn't it? Particularly on a warm day like today. Anyway, back to the video. Now, this is the bit that I really want to focus on, and there is an image of Mr. Morris after this hammer attack. So he was attacked with a hammer, and yet I've scrolled through this article and I've actually read other articles on the same sentences. And nowhere have I read the culprit for said hammer attack. Now, we can only presume, although this obviously isn't guaranteed and I found no evidence of it, that the person who attacked Mr. Morris with a hammer was likely of some sort of opposing faction to what he was protesting about or what he was rioting about. Now, there's no mention of the assailant that attacked Mr. Morris. In fact, there's no further mention of the attack at all, and certainly no mention of any sentencing or imprisonment for the perpetrator. And dare I say, even if you take into consideration, which the law shouldn't, the sanctity of a religious building to certain members of the community, surely physically attacking a person with a hammer, which is a potentially lethal weapon, would carry a significantly heavier sentence than being aggressive and throwing bricks at a building. He was topless for parts of the protest as he has taken his shirt off to use as a bandage for an injured woman, Mr. Muldoon said. Why was another lady injured if, as we're led to believe, the main crime taking part in this particular protest or riot was missiles and projectiles being thrown at a mosque? Unless someone caught an unfortunate blow or there was an unfortunate deflection or they got in the crossfire, for people to be getting injured, then there obviously are people who object to the behaviour of these individuals and are going to attack them. But yet we hear nothing about it in this report. The article concludes that more and more offenders will be sent to prison as our detectives continue to work tirelessly to review all the evidence we have. I can assure local communities that decisive action is being taken against those involved. Some of them haven't been arrested yet, but we're coming for them. And there we are. Almost certainly another example of two-tier policing and two-tier judiciary. This article raises far more questions than it answered. Who attacked Mr. Morris? What happened to them? Were they arrested? Were they sentenced? Why are we not being told the identity of the attacker? Why are people receiving more severe sentences for throwing projectiles at a mosque than they would be from throwing projectiles at any other building, considering there are no blasphemy laws in this country? And why have we still not heard about the airport attackers who attacked police officers, broke a female officer's nose, and yet still haven't been sent to prison or received a proper trial? Until next time, stay safe, stay sane.